There we are, I think.
There we are. That's weird. I was clicking that button.
Oh, well, did you click the scene, or
Scene.
you actually have to hide the video clip?
Oh,
That's StreamYard talk for everybody.
yes. Sorry. I was trying my hand at doing what Chris does, and obviously it's not that easy. So,
well, I
good
just
morning.
transferred it. Yeah, I transferred it to the StreamYard controls, where in the past we were imposing that ourselves. So, it's fun. It's fun. Good morning,
fun,
everybody.
Yes. Another smooth takeoff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good morning. Happy Friday to all. It is Friday, July the 12th, and we are back again talking about our custom user store and authentication that we're trying to do inside of our Blazor app. So, Chris, how are you doing this morning?
I think I might have just... So I'm doing good. I think I accidentally might have played a little music there. So, again.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
Oh, okay. Well, then it wasn't. Who knows? All right. Doing great. It's Friday. Like you said, we're headed into what I understand is a rainy Saturday, which is okay. Whatever.
Yeah, we kind of need that after the hot and the couple of weeks we've had of that. So I'm happy for a little rain.
And I think it's going to cool things down a little bit too. So that's good. So
we definitely need.
So yeah, definitely welcome to, well, definitely, because I know I look outside and I see a lot of brown grass out there. So we have been dealing with some heat lately here in the Philadelphia region. And but welcome everybody on July 12th of 2024. As we are continuing forward, what we've been doing the last couple episodes is we have been implementing a custom user store as part of the whole Blazor auth from scratch initiative of what if you use Blazor in .NET 8 and beyond, and you don't pick the individual accounts templates. I think it can make somebody feel stuck, like, oh, I have to use that. And then even if you do use it, which I still think is a great option, you might feel you have to dismantle it a little bit because you don't need all the features. And so by learning how this stuff works under the hood, hoping to enable you to make the best decision for your app. And right now, the reason why we are implementing a custom user store is we've been doing everything so bare metal in ASP.NET Core that we were just ignoring the SignInManager, which you will see littered throughout the template. And you might then say to me, like, hey, Chris and Rich, like, you guys did this way. Why aren't you using the SignInManager? Well, because if you take the sign-in manager in the default templates, you're also taking the default implementation of the user store, which is backed by Entity Framework, which is a great implementation if you need what's in the box. And if you don't, then you got to learn what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, and sometimes it's, it gives you a better understanding going forward of digging into this. So we're doing it so you don't have to necessarily.
Yeah. Like, learn along with us. And then also, I think, hopefully accelerate when you say, I'm going to try using a user store. Oh, remember that part where they were stuck for 30 minutes?
Right.
Hopefully.
You get to fast forward the video through that. We had to live through it. So there's that.
Yeah. Believe me, one thing I have been trying to do in the YouTube editor and been a little frustrated is going back and trying to add some chapters. And our videos are long, and I don't know if this is the real issue, but our videos are long enough that when I try to load up that editor, it's just not loading.
Yeah.
And
it does take forever.
So I'm a little frustrated by that, because I really think the live nature is the way this works best, just for both of us. And then second, but now I want to go back and make it a little easier to consume. And having a little bit of a struggle with that. I would certainly like to do some clipping so that you don't, if you're watching in the future, you don't have to maybe sit through some of the things. But anyways.
And there are some, there's some ways to mark the video or capture timestamps ahead of time too, which we can play around with. So
right. That's been the hardest part, is always thinking, like, as in the moment, like, oh, this is clearly the start of a chapter. That's hard.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is great about what we do, it's just a long, it's one conversation, right? And it's not until you go back and look at it, it's like, oh yeah, there were different parts there, but we just kind of morphed into interesting conversations just as a result of what we're doing.
Yep. So with that,
Yeah.
is it
So
okay if I start? Well, go ahead. I'll see what you were going to ask.
I was just going to say, as we're going through this, because it is a conversation, we want to make sure you're involved as well. So give us your thoughts, comments. If you've been down some of these paths before and know some of the fixes, you can certainly chime in and help us out, make it interactive. If you run into things that we're doing and you have questions around it, ask away. That's what we're here for. So
Yeah, that's a very good point. I definitely agree with that. Boy, I made a mess of this. Okay, there we go. A little bit better. So if I can take a quick detour, last time, people will remember we spent a significant amount of time in basically by taking our current approach, where we have a home page. And again, for folks who are brand new to what we're doing here, we have a home page, home.razor, that it just splats a bunch of login stuff out there. And, it certainly is not what you would do in a production app, but it just lets us take these implementations and put them and then test them. And we took login and put it in its own component. So my own login is its own component, and Microsoft external login is its own component, and Google external login is its own component. And if you're watching right now and you're seeing redundancy and you're saying, why don't they refactor? The answer is yes, absolutely. In your code, go ahead and do that. But this just keeps things straight, simple, clear for somebody who's new to this, right?
Yep.
So we were having trouble getting the sign-in login component, which I had created to be the next version of this using the SignInManager. It just it wouldn't build. The IntelliSense was going crazy. It wouldn't be recognized as it wasn't being recognized as a component. And so eventually I gave up. And in the last few minutes, everybody, I think, saw that I just kind of commented out some stuff in my own login and got it working with the sign in and just the sign, just moved on. Now, I will tell you that I think I may be onto what the issue is. And it wasn't what I thought, because I do remember in earlier days of Razor Pages, Razor and MVC, and even Blazor, that there was this thing about the Razor syntax highlighter editor in Visual Studio where, it's probably a very hard task to build one of these. I'm just going to give the team a little grace there. And that there was these common things where people would close Visual Studio, clean the project, delete all the artifacts. It would be kind of referred to as kind of jiggling the solution in some way, and then open it back up and ta-da. And none of that stuff was working. So let me show you when I created the new, now watch, it's not going to have a problem today. When I created the new component last time, I right clicked. This is Visual Studio only, because if you do all this stuff in outside of it, if you're not using the IDE, you're maybe using another IDE, different, not related.
Okay.
I had said add, and I picked Razor component. Okay. So let's just call this add Razor component. All right. Then it turns out there is a second way that you could create a component. You could right click and say add new item. And I'm going to pick Razor component out of there. And I'm going to call this add new item. Now, the reality is these look very similar. I mean, the same.
Yeah, just the name's different, right?
But what I found was if I go to add new Razor component and pick properties, the build action was not content. It was none. It was not content. And I mean, it is now, and I'll explain why I think that is. And if I go to add new item, this was add content. Now, after the show, I updated Visual Studio.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I'm in a place now where I can't say for sure was that a specific bug to a specific version of Visual Studio that maybe was like a regression bug or something?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I go to the sign in login right now, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to break it just by doing this, but if I set that to none, I feel like it doesn't really impact it. But the moment I changed that to content and rebuilt the solution, everything lit up, including the components being this teal color, which kind of lets you know it's a Blazor component.
Right.
And then when I went back to home.razor, it was lit up. Oh, see, now look at this.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that I've set it back to there isn't a using. Nope. Now that I set it back to none, the home.razor seems to be like, hold on, what happened?
And you did have that squiggle under the, if you go back into that component, you had the squiggle under the edit.
I'm sorry. That's all over the place. Oh, right. So it's like, it's going, hold on, what happened here? In fact, what if I close it and open sign in login? Yeah. It's like, I don't know. And this is where we were, and we were beating our head against the wall, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm a little disappointed that I can't simply recreate it because I maybe made the mistake after the show of saying like, gosh, I wonder if it's a Visual Studio thing. But I was really scratching my head because I said, we've been using this for like a year. Right. So
how many components have we added?
Yeah. Is it a regression that maybe nagged one release? And then, of course, I updated it. And so boom. And so I don't even know how to report it at this point. But let's see if I'm onto something, because if I set these property back to content and rebuild the solution, I mean, we already see the little squiggle went away. It seems to know that it's a component again, Blazor component. And if I go back to home.razor, I may have to close and reopen it. I'm not sure. Or I'm like, am I doomed? No, see, look at that.
No.
Clean the solution, rebuild the solution. Is it this desperate that I am going to close and reopen? Now, granted, like I said, if you watch the show, I didn't choose a content type.
Right.
It's just, it turned out that when I examined it later and I said, well, wait a second, why is it none? And let's see what happens as this comes back in. Yeah, see, I reloaded the project basically.
Yeah.
And now we're good. And the reason why I say now we're good is I'm going to go ahead and run it. And this was the thing we were struggling with on the show, is I just wanted to see all of this side by side, different components. And that's what we have now.
Nice.
So I think, and I kind of don't like, crossing my fingers and saying, I think I know what it is, but I kind of think that this was the issue, is that when I was finally poking around after the show and this build action was set to none, I was like, well, wait, that's weird. And so I created another component, but I used the add new item, and that was set to content. And I was like, well, that's strange. And so I don't know if we've stumbled across a bug that's already gone. But I suppose the lesson is that if you're sitting here wondering, like, why aren't my Razor components, why do they just not seem to play nice anymore? Then at least consider checking this out when you're trying to figure out what's going on. So,
yeah, and that's something, having run into similar issues before, that's something I never thought to go look at. So it's awesome to bring that kind of, hopefully make that top of mind for people if they run into that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's always going to be the issue, but it's just, when I replayed it back in my head, I said, you know what? I right-clicked, I said add Razor component, which seems like the right thing to do. But now I've just tried an add new item and it's different. I don't know. I don't know for sure. If I really went back and watched the video step by step, I don't feel like I went in there and changed anything. So in any case, all right. So where are we? Well, why don't we figure out where we're at? We have a new sign-in login component, and the difference between it and the login component we've been using all this time is that after we get the form from we get the information from the form and we verify that it's not null, we are calling the SignInManager to sign us in, which requires a username and password, because the SignInManager, the password sign in async version anyway, method anyways, is going to use your UserStore and to go ahead and look up what the password should be and do the verification for you, which is kind of nice. Like everything else, it appears that you can modify that implementation. If you said like, hey, I don't want to use the default password storage or routine, because we don't actually store passwords in databases. We store something that we can verify later, which is usually what is called a salted and stretched hash. I think I've got the current modern approach right, that usually you salt the hash and you usually stretch it, which means that you run the operation multiple times, and that's all just handled. So that sounds great, right? Except that what you might be thinking when I say that's all just handled, this is just to compare it to our original model where we signed the user in we went all the way down to the bare metal of HTTP context and called sign in async. Right. So this is a little bit higher level abstraction. But the question you might be asking is well, wait a second, this user doesn't have a password. Like how's this even going to work? Mm-hmm. So you ask a great question, and you can see that one of the ways we're dealing with it is just by putting the word password in to be no matter what we put into the form, we're just going to put in password. Let me see. Hold on. Right. I think the producer might have a meeting or something. I'm not sure.
Okay. We got to keep the producer happy here. So this is happens from time to time. You can see. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, you're right. I am muted. So okay. There might have been a little bit of complaining because the executive producer here is muttering at me.
Aww.
And it's crazy because I want to say like, well, if you're hungry, go downstairs. There's food. But I have a feeling he's like, but I don't want to leave the show. I'm running the show. So
got work to do.
Yeah. So let's see what happens here.
Yeah.
This is kind of what we've been waiting for. Is we have our various ways to log in the app. And we all know that if I put any old thing in here that we're going to get a user logged in with that username. That'll be the claim that gets used later. If I put my name in here and click submit, the question for me is, where does this go? We have a UserStore implementation where we have intentionally put breakpoints everywhere so we can watch everything happening. We've already taken the one out of dispose because there really wasn't anything to dispose in our UserStore for now. And it just kept hitting it. So it's like, okay, let's take that one out. But back here, if model is not null, which it isn't, let's call the SignInManager with the name that was passed in, which in this case is just the name I typed in. We're going to put in a password, which normally we would want to take from the form. And maybe we can implement that. We're saying that they're not going to be logged in persistently and don't lock them out if they fail. So we got hopped to our UserStore's find my name async. So this was the first method that needed to be implemented. And no, if you're wondering, we did not implement this on the show last time. As you can see, I was poking a little bit ahead and implemented just like the most fake possible answer here, where I basically say, okay, if the username that came in. So first of all, notice that you get this normalized username that is all uppercase.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So the framework's just doing that. The platform is just doing that for us. Right. I try not to use the word framework. Everybody understands why, because we already have a .NET framework.
Right.
And we are now in .NET and we're on ASP.NET Core. So I feel like that's the web platform that we're on. We got a cancellation token that simply says like, no, nobody's canceled this. So we could theoretically in our implementation in some future, if we go out to make an async call, just before we make the async call, we could check the cancellation token. That's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I would be willing to bet a lot of implementations don't bother, right? They just say, well, whatever, the database call, or even, let's be more honest, you just don't think about it.
True.
So
True.
in any case, the normalized username came back capitalized. So as you can see, I have this wonderful bit of code here that uses a switch expression to say, based on the normalized username, if it happens to be Chris, then let's create a new application user whose username is Chris, and the normalized username is uppercase because that got passed into us. Application user is derived off of identity user, and it's got a whole mess of stuff, but this is all I'm going to implement for now. And then if it happens to be Bob, let's accept that as well, and we will find that user. But if we don't, we're gonna pass null, which should trigger the hey, the user doesn't exist.
Okay.
So because this is an async method, the interface is passing task application user. So you could await this. And in fact, if we go look at the code that called this, I wonder if it's going to be obvious in the call stack. It is awaiting it. So perfect. That's what I would have expected. Probably because they figure many implementations are going to go make an IO bound call to a database. So we should await that and allow you to implement it asynchronously. Pretty awesome.
Definitely thinking through the scenarios.
Yeah. So because here's the problem though, right? I need to return a completed task. And sure, I could build that task up from scratch, but you may or may not know that a very easy way, when your method truly does not turn out to be async, but you are implementing a method that returns a task anyway, then you can use task.fromResult, and you basically get a completed task with your answer in it, and it ships that back for you. Technically, this takes a type parameter. This is technically what the method is that it's a task from result of application user. But Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code and everything is going to gray that out, saying, you don't. Oh, I'm sorry. It's really a nullable application user. It's going to see it immediately grays that out, saying, you don't actually have to declare this. We infer that for you. So you'll apply a refactoring and it'll go away. But the reason I want to state that is because in some future, when you put a resulted here that doesn't map back to what is returned in the function definition, and it's red squiggly, and you're sitting here scratching your head not knowing what to do, that's why. Is it is inferring from up here that, well, you said you were returning a task. I can infer that it has to be an application user because you're returning it from, like, it has to be. But then it can leave you as the developer later going like, why isn't it working?
Yeah.
Like, for example, if I just do this, if I just change that to a 1 to a 12, now I've got a red squiggly.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what? Yeah. It's not right.
Yeah, because sometimes what you get back as a result might be buried in there in another property too, right? So that throws all the red squiggles up there.
Yep. And if concise code is great. I love concise code. And it's just one of those cases where if you kind of know ahead of time that this is probably your issue, then you probably won't bang your head against the wall for a whole afternoon. Ask me how I know. So let's move on, returning the task. And we can see that I actually ended up back in find by name async. This is deep in the platform, and maybe not all that deep. The default implementation of the user manager, which kind of gets us back to why do we care about the default implementation of the user manager? And it goes back to this in the documentation that says we have our ASP.NET Core platform. We implement for you a user manager, which has a sign-in manager that talks to this. The sign-in manager in the platform talks to the user manager. And if you just implement what's in the green, you don't have to touch this.
Right.
That's kind of where we're at today. I think in the future, I will be able to explain when and why you do want to do this. It turns out I've had a little time to think about it, and I can see why you might want to do it. In fact, we may uncover it in just a few seconds. So, need to potentially check all keys. Remember we were talking about this protect personal data?
Yeah.
I cannot tell you exactly what this is doing, but if there were any if there were any, if protect personal data was kind of checked, then we go through this code here that like goes through a keyring. And I honestly implement this iLookup protector keyring. It just makes me wonder, like, wow, when would you implement this and how? And but it didn't matter. So the user was not null. So definitely the issue was that options in our store, this was false. Protect personal data was false, which if you can look really closely, you can see.
Yeah.
So we just didn't execute this code. And we are now going to return that little bare bones user that isn't really, I didn't fill out a lot of the application user. And let's see if that's a problem. Because I'm just going to hit F5 because we're going to blow up. Store does not implement iUser password store.
Oh.
So password sign in async is clearly now, it's going to the UserStore, but the UserStore implementation does not provide the methods that it expects in order to go look something up in a password store. Instead, we need to also implement iUser password store. We haven't done that yet.
Okay.
So when we come back to why would you implement your own user manager, I believe that we've actually kind of stumbled on a use case, which we may be interested in later. What if I don't want username passwords in my app? So that could come back later to us.
Okay.
You know, it's not something I'm going to worry about right now. Instead, we're going to do what we always do, which is find a way to work around it. So UserStore, we need to also implement iUser password store. And it looks like that also takes a generic, a type declaration. Is that what that's called? And it needs our application user, which is fine. Why is it complaining now? Because you didn't implement it.
Right. You've got some methods to do.
Yeah. And I tend to be kind of one of those people where, look, I could go to the documentation and see what methods I need, or I could kind of be lazy and I could say implement the interface, and then I get what I need here down at the bottom, I assume. Boy, I wonder which ones it just added.
Ones came in.
Yeah, what just came in. So I could do this. Watch this. This is a way to do this. I'm not saying that you should always do this. I could implement remaining members explicitly, and now it should be more obvious to me what are
Plus,
the new
they don't
methods.
have breakpoints.
They don't have the breakpoints. Yeah. This is an option. It's not required. I could just as easily, like, you can just as easily do it this way. That's fine. So I'm going to, I mean, I don't know. Some people like code to be very explicit and descriptive. So now you know there's 2 ways to do it. Oh, good. I did 3, which I like that too, by the way. But let's just say that that's from here. And we're going to say that that's from here. And we're going to say that that's from here just later. Just when we look at this later. I'm curious if there's a refactoring. Yeah, there is. I bet you there's a refactoring that says implement implicitly.
Yeah.
So it switches it. And now watch. Now watch. I bet you I can come back here and say implement explicitly.
We can go back and forth. Yes.
Round and round she goes. Okay. So we know now, without a doubt, that this is going to get called.
Right.
So, $64,000 question. Boy, that's a really old version of that show.
Yeah.
I mean, we should be at least up to $100,000 pyramid or whatever by now, as if a lot of our younger viewers have any idea what I'm talking about. I guess if you ever wondered where my salute comes from, it probably is Dick Clark. I'm sure that's where I pulled it from, because I was a game show kid. I watched game shows all the time. So I'm sure that's what I'm thinking when I do that. So there were build errors. Okay.
Interesting.
Oh, I see. I think what I might have done is by implementing it explicitly. I think we need the public keyword so that we don't run into an access violation here. If you implement it explicitly, I wonder if you don't need that. I mean, maybe that's what I wasn't really paying attention to. But now we've built, and this part I think is going to be a little fun, because I'm not sure what's going to get called here. So let's take first of all, let's take a user that we don't have. I think we're going to get a different kind of exception because if model is not null, if result, okay, so the result is going to be null, and at least it should be null. And so it just, I guess we kind of fall through okay. The only thing that I kind of don't like about that is that if I go to our sign in login, we're not handling what happens if result.succeeded. Like we're just not doing anything with this. So I wonder if I just run this again, am I going to get a better view? Okay, if result succeeded, and the answer is going to be, yeah, it's going to be false. So I feel like this is an opportunity. If result failed, I think we could probably look up why. I'm curious. Let's see, let's look result failed. And do we get any kind of information? Not really, but we didn't succeed. I mean, the task succeeded, fine. But I suppose that we could look through this and maybe figure out like, okay, the user wasn't found. I don't know that you necessarily want to say that, but put up some kind of friendlier message like couldn't log in.
Right.
So we are not doing that. But maybe we'll leave that to look at a little bit later. Obviously, I've changed the code. Okay. So let's go to the other case where we did have a user, but we didn't implement a user store. I'm sorry, we didn't implement the user password store.
Right.
So click submit. If model's not null, return task and result. Get password hash async is not implemented. Now, the interesting part here is that I believe we could, it's just a string. So, I mean, I don't have a problem returning this for now. Oh, that's so interesting that it's like, oh, that's so cute. It's so cute, Copilot, what you're trying to do here. That's really cute because that's not what I want to do. I feel like I should be able to do this, except that, I see. This time, let's be a little more explicit. Is that okay? Is that going to get rid of the squiggly? Yeah, because it's a nullable. It's a nullable string.
Yep.
So by default, this is a string, not a nullable string. And I'm basically saying like, no, make it nullable. So it's okay, fine. So I'm actually really curious. This is, if you're wondering how far ahead I've gotten, this is it. So my next thing is, well, wait a second. It's going to go hash the password. It's going to hash this password, and it's not going to match.
Good point.
And let's rush ahead here. Couldn't log the user in. Oh, that's interesting. I think that might have done everything, which I didn't really intend. I kind of wanted to, did I not put Chris in? What did I do wrong there? I wanted to see.
Put in Chris.
I wanted to see this happen, but I don't have a breakpoint here. I don't have a breakpoint. So let's do that again. Here we go. We are returning the password hash.
Right.
To something in the call stack, which is verify password async. So where is this living? Where are we now? We are in the default user manager.
Okay.
Okay, so the default user manager, which we are allowing, the SignInManager is using. So it's a web. The SignInManager is using the user manager. The user manager would not work unless we add all of the program CS startup code that uses the default stuff, or we implement our own. And we are doing the or.
Okay.
So this is going to fire. And let's go ahead and, oh, I was hoping we would see it. Oh, no, come on. I want to see that happen. Here we go. So we are now in platform code. We're going to go to the store now and get the password hash async, which I believe is going to, okay, so we got it. Here it comes. It's coming back. And so is hash null? Well, now we got our answer about if it can't find it.
Interesting.
We return back a password verification result of failed, which means maybe we can do a better job of picking this up. but then we're going to call the password hasher. What the heck is that? And call verify hashed password. So let's right click and say go to definition. There's an password hasher in the user manager. And well, we didn't implement one.
No.
So that means through dependency injection, I'm figuring we must be getting a password hasher, right?
Yeah.
And we're not getting a whole lot of help here to what that implementation actually is. But I suspect that, and I think we could find it in the source code. We could go back to that add identity core method and we could find it.
Yeah.
Unless it's in add SignInManager, I can't say for sure. But I think we could sort of cheat our way there a little bit quicklier, a little bit more quickly. Wow, what was that word? By let's see, where are we? We are currently on this line of code by hitting F11 here to jump to where it's going. So the platform has a default password hasher implementation.
Okay.
And this is going to, as I talked about earlier, it's the default way that ASP.NET Core Identity is going to take the provided password, which we can see here is password, and it's going to take the hash password, and it's going to take. So the hash password is what it went and looked up supposedly.
Right.
This is what you would really store in your database. This is what was provided by the user, and first thing it has to do is it's going to decode the hash password, whatever that means. And so fine, we've got a bunch of bytes here, which I guess is just I guess when we look at it, it's just going to be if we can look at it. Oh, great. It's loading like JSON, Newtonsoft JSON and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling this is just password. That's what I think it is. I think it's just password encoded. So now the more important thing is, what does it do with provided password? So provided password looks like here. Oh, wow. Look at this. It's like there's all kinds of code in here for old cases. Verify hash password v2, verify hash password v3. Like what a switch. So it just blew up because there's no format marker in our password verification. Wow. So moral of the story here is going to be, I think, that there's a couple ways to go about this.
Okay. We
could certainly implement a password hasher and replace it. We could do that. And we could put ourselves in a position for it to just always work. I don't know if there's a ton of value in that because it's not the thing you really want to do. You want to implement a password hashing routine or use the one that comes in the box. So
do you really want to own all that, right?
No, right. I'm not a fan of owning that stuff. In fact, you know that I'm not a fan of owning it so much that I prefer just using external logins when it makes sense, when it makes sense for your app. So the other thing we could do is this now becomes a chicken and egg problem. In order to log in a user, must I first create the ability to register a user? That's kind of the thinking.
Yeah.
Because when registering a user, we will get the benefit of the hashing routine to put the password into a data store.
Yes. So
I kind of feel like that's the next step, and it's something we haven't done at all.
Well, I was going to say that, yeah, because the assumption is you already have an account when you come here. You're just going to log in.
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't know if this is a disservice, maybe. We've been just bypassing all of that with just, you're a user, you're good. So I suppose, I mean, there's good to this. I don't know what other SignInManager methods we might use. I mean, I suppose I could take a quick peek. Can sign in, check password sign in. What is this about? Attempts a password. So this is different. It attempts a password sign in. That's kind of interesting. Can the user sign in? We don't know what that does. But clearly some of these other methods are going to be really important. But let's see, here's password sign in async. And there's also sign in async, which looks to me like this is what we've been doing before, right? Like just bypass them. Oh, and by the way, let's sign them in with some claims, which I have a feeling is going to be very useful when we sign someone in with an external login. We could take the claims from the login, put them in here, maybe. I mean, I don't know. So the sign-in manager has methods that could help us around this. I'm just wondering, is that the best use of our time, or is it the kind of thing that maybe you do it to get by today, but we do need to implement a register routine? Just wondering what you think. If maybe we should just get something signed in, and then we know we want to come back to this.
I think that's the way to go, especially given, we're 3/4 of the way through. I think it makes sense for where we are here. But as a future show, registering is something we need to do.
Yeah, but we definitely learned something. I think we learned that that what the templates use this password when you're filling out a form, which makes total sense. And in order to, we want to go implement that. I think we definitely want to go implement that, but I don't think we would do it in a short amount of time. So this particular method, let's see, there's one method here that asks for the user and if they're persistent, but we don't have an application user. So let's see if SignInManager can it get us application user. This returns a bool, but you have to show up with the application user. So I'm not, there's a user manager. And then would I drop into user manager and say, find by ID async, or name async is what I think is getting used?
Yeah.
Is that correct? I suppose we can go look at our user manager. Thank you. I'm sorry, that's not our user manager. Yeah, find by name. Okay, so now you might be wondering why I made the choice to go through the sign-in manager to get this when it's like it's our own user manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making that choice because my feeling is that, once again, it keeps the code a little abstract, a little decoupled, is that the component is not concerning itself with which user manager has been implemented in this application. It's letting the sign-in manager take care of that.
Yep.
So that way the sign-in manager stays the abstraction of record, so to speak. So if we get back, what is this going to get us back? An application user? Yes, it gets us back an application user. So if that result succeeded, now we want to sign them in, right?
Right. But we got to figure something else other than succeeded.
Oh, that's interesting. Because it returns an application user. So this is more like, I guess, this is app user, and if app user is not null, I suppose that's where we're at. Because we're not actually getting a success, like you said. We're either getting one or not.
We're just getting a match.
Yeah. And then we have been ignoring if app user is not null. I suppose theoretically, for now, we could say user was not found, because I'm hesitating putting this back in the web app in terms of like surfacing it, because I don't think you would normally surface it. There's a whole school of thought that username harvesting could be done by, like, let me just try usernames until it says password incorrect. Now I know I have a good username.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this for now. And then if result dot succeeded, I don't really have a good answer for what to do there. because the user is getting signed in. But if it failed, then let's at least say password signing failed. And I feel like this is the kind of stuff you could hook up to telemetry.
Absolutely.
So right now we're just writing the console, but we could hook this up to telemetry, and so that way, it's the kind of thing that you would set for your service team. If password sign-ins just start failing through the roof, then I think you have to make an assumption that there's some kind of attack or probe going on.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have a quick method to just be like, well, is it coming from one IP? Sure, let's just block the IP and call it a day.
Right.
I make it sound simple. Operations is much more complicated than what I just said.
Exactly. And I think we do have that iLogger injected at the beginning, so that would be a perfect thing to include here.
Yeah, that's true. We're not using the logger right now, but we'll get to it. So let's see where we're at. Can we sign someone in? Because what I would like to see is, oh, wait a second. I picked the wrong sign in, didn't I?
I did not notice. Sorry.
Yeah, I picked password sign in async, which we know isn't going to work. We want sign in async, and we want to use this app user that we just got. And we are going to say, I forget, there was a smaller method. Is persistent is false. And then application method, authentication method. I'm not 100% sure what we should be putting in here. So I'm going to leave it out for now.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure what we should be doing. Oh, it's still not happy. If app user is not null, cannot assign void to an implicitly typed variable. Oh, because this is actually a task and the result. That's weird. Why is it void result? Okay, I feel like I'm looking at this and just it said I've been looking at the code too long.
So it doesn't return anything. No.
I think it does. It returns. Oh, wait. You're right. You're right. It doesn't return anything. Does that mean it throws? Okay. I wonder if it throws. I wonder if it throws. So, hey, we got a great comment here from Ahmet. I hope I'm saying that correct. Hello and have a good day. Very valuable for me as a Blazor developer. Thank you for doing the show. I'm glad. Thank you. I really appreciate the comment. Certainly,
absolutely.
You could make the argument that things move very slow, but I'm hoping that this is the kind of understanding that in the past, this is all mysterious, even to me. I mean, it was mysterious. And now I kind of regret not trying to learn more about how this stuff works. So find the user. And I kind of don't want to sit through all this. So if app user is not null, nope, we actually got a user. We're going to try to sign them in. And oh, okay. Next little roadblock, get user ID async. So the user has to have an ID, and it's just a string. And we have not implemented that.
Not just the name, but the ID as well.
Yeah, we haven't implemented that yet. So that's going to explode. So we'll have some fun with this as well. I think maybe sooner rather than later, we're going to want to look into getting a UserStore going so that we're not, I don't know. I've been kicking that back and forth for a while, is how soon do we want to actually implement a UserStore?
Well, I think we want to do it before we do the registration because that's going to be important, right?
Yeah. So let's see. Application user. Oh, what's wrong here? What are you complaining about? Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
You're not return. Okay.
Not everything's
Not
returning a
returning
value
anything,
yet.
right? Yeah.
Right. And so this application user that comes in, I want to check user.username here, don't I? Is this a thing I can do? Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe not like that. Is this something I can do in a switch expression, or am I crazy?
I've not seen anything that looks like that before.
Yeah. I bet you I could write a switch expression that does this. It's just that it's going to elude me right now. So, oh, look at that. It's like, well, is this what you were looking for? Sure.
Only because we don't have our own data store, so this is kind of doing it through code.
Yeah, except that I can't return a nullable here.
Oh.
So,
But
look at application user is not nullable either. So they are presuming that if you've gotten this far, you have a real live application user. Otherwise you can't do it. So this has to be a throw.
Yeah.
Man, now I actually wonder which. Is it an argument exception?
Yeah.
I guess it's not an argument null exception. To think about that a little bit. So if username is Chris, if username is Bob, I just want to get an ID back. It says to get the user ID. Can we say that that's user one? I don't know how that helps. I don't know if that's what we really want. But let's see. Okay. It's more than I wanted. So we do have our app user, which doesn't have a whole lot of the properties filled. If it's not null, let's try signing them in. When it tries signing in, it says, let's get the user ID. And we're just going to return this string of 1 because I'm not sure what that's going to do. The user whose identifier should be retrieved. I wonder if that means, now we're trying to get the username. So it's becoming a little bit of like dominoes rolling downhill.
Yeah.
First one leads to the next one and so on. But surely this is the SignInManager, like saying like, well, let me get all the information that we want about the nullability does not match. Interesting. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Because they're saying that you may not have a name. That if you come in here, you definitely should exist because they didn't make this nullable, but you might not have a name stored. So
as a property, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's not. I suppose that's possible. So now that we've done this, we'll go set a breakpoint here, set a breakpoint here, because we should see that stuff happening. And we've picked out find by name. Weird, right? Find by name. That gives us an application user, which we could probably fill out a little bit more than we are. If the app user is not null, try to sign them in. And when we try to sign them in, it says, well, let me get the user ID, which we've now done. Let me get the name. What comes next? I wonder.
Get the password. Yeah.
Handle event async. That might be it. Almost. No sign-in authentication scheme is registered for the scheme identity.application. Did you forget? Yeah. Okay, look at that.
Just looking for something on setup. So in the program.
Right.
Huh.
So I'll tell you where I think this might be coming from is let's go to the reference code. And if people haven't been watching what the reference code is, this is a new project with the individual accounts selection made for global WebAssembly. And what this allowed us to do is see like, well, how do they do it now? And if we go to Program CS here on the server side, the default authentication scheme is identity constants application scheme, which I'm not 100% sure what that is. It's identity prefix dot application. Is that what it said?
Yeah, so it did identity.application.
Yeah.
So line 11 is the prefix, line 16 is dot application.
Right. So what's happened, I think, is that in the default world, they use these constants that they've already got in the templates. They've got these constants they've already set up. But I have a feeling that because we specifically chose not to do that, we created our own cookie, our own authentication scheme. When this stuff is getting registered, I suspect that you can register it. I wonder if you can register it with a scheme.
You should be able to, right?
Let's look at the, let's look. There wasn't anything there. Okay. Is it in add identity core? I would hate to have to say, oh, here's where you have to, a setup action. Okay.
Where did they do it in the reference project again?
So in the, it's a good point. So let's go back and look at the reference project and say,
add authentication options. So they're kind of doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, but now where does this get registered, or is it being, what I hope is not the case, is it being implicitly registered somewhere, like maybe here? Or is add default token providers? I don't think so. I suppose. Yeah.
Isn't it the add identity cookies?
You think this add identity?
26?
Oh, interesting. Add identity cookies. That's a good
right.
point.
So we could define in because our default scheme being the TDS cookie, and then say add those cookies, because that should be what it's then looking for.
Now you make a good point there. Add identity cookies does what? It says it takes a new identity cookies builder, it creates one, says the application cookie is add application cookie, and then returns the cookie builder. Wow, there's a lot going on in here. Builder.addCookie, identity constants. What I'm a little confused by as we look at this is why. So add authentication in our app. We are saying add cookie, but somehow this isn't getting linked up to identity. It feels like that's what this is doing. But
that's how I agree. That's how I see it.
Yeah. So it takes an authentication builder, which is fine because we're in the middle of an authentication builder. And it returns this identity cookies builder. So I'm guessing that's what we need to do. We need to, it might even be as simple as builder.addApplicationCookie, which is really, I think, calling this. It's almost like we need a cookie that maybe has a little bit more than it did before. I wonder if this events is the issue.
So that's a constant. Where does that constant live? The application scheme.
This constant lives in the core identity platform in identity constants.
Gotcha. So it was
just here. Yeah.
And it was all what we had before, the identity.application. That's all it was. Okay.
Right. I don't know if it would be a problem to just add the identity cookies.
Yeah. I wouldn't put the application user there, but
it's interesting that it's oh, why don't you like this? Oh, I see.
doesn't contain a.
Because it doesn't know anything about add Google when it's returned. Can I do that here? Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, and then what did I do here? I've forgotten already.
You just started the options and didn't finish it. Yeah.
So I should be able to just do this, right? So I think what this is doing is by default, it is changing your auth scheme to not, it's not going to be TDTS cookie anymore. It's going to be identity.application.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's bad. I just wonder how you customize it. Let's see if this gets us through, since it is a few minutes after 9. It would be a nice place to stop if this actually signs someone in. Even though there's a lot of things here that aren't necessarily ideal. Okay, so. Well, it says you are not authorized. It didn't blow up, but not authorized. Let's see if there is a cookie, which I can do by going to application. Yeah, look at this. So there's a cookie here, but we're not considered authorized. And I think that there might be, this is what I think, just thinking about it for a few seconds. I think we might be running into a little bit of a conflict where authentication is based on TDTS cookie, but the identity cookies are not.
Yeah.
So sure, there's an identity.application cookie, but what Blazor is saying and the web platform is saying is, but you're authenticated based on this scheme.
Yeah.
So therefore you're not authenticated.
Yeah. And I think where you were going with the options and defining what that default schema is inside of that context down there with identity core, I think that's where we need to be.
Yeah. My guess is that we could tell identity in add identity core that one of those options might be, hey, here's the default scheme. I think what add identity cookies does, it's not that I dislike these extension methods. What I think the issue is add identity cookies is in some respect a little too tightly coupled to add identity core. Like they're all expecting the same stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe I should be a little fair. That makes it sound like the team kind of goofed.
No, I wouldn't say that.
By default, they're tightly coupled together, because if we really can use an options object to replace this, well, then they're not so tightly coupled that we're hosed. Like it'll work. Yeah. So anyways, I think that's where we are.
I think it's a good space to be for the end of a week of doing and digging into custom UserStore.
Yeah, and it's like everything that we've done so far, where like if the domino falls and then we realize there's another one and another one and another one, but which isn't bad. Like we were doing this when we were signing in before.
And I think it's a helpful way to kind of understand, well, okay, as you hit those dominoes, you get a better understanding of, all right, what's next, and as you go and pick the pieces that you want to have your custom bits in there for what's next, you've got the option to kind of go ahead and do that. So
yeah, the other thing that I will give credit to the whole platform and framework and everything is how often are we scratching our heads so much that we're looking at documentation or trying to find stuff in documentation or blog post or whatever. Like we're able to kind of figure out what's next just by watching it work and using IntelliSense and so on. So your camera had a good run today, by the way, until just now. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. It got the whole show. I thought we were going to get
Yeah.
there. 1 second.
So
Let's see if this works.
yeah. So in any case, for folks watching,
Nope.
Thanks. Thank you very much. We definitely appreciate it. It's great that folks are watching live. Absolutely love it. We know that the time, there are 24 hours, 24 time zones, and we definitely have people watching all over the world, which that I really, really enjoy seeing, looking at some YouTube stats and seeing that there's folks just everywhere watching this. It's great. And, it's not the kind of typical thing you see on YouTube, which with really quick focus demos of like, here's get it done. I mean, we're going to come out of this theoretically. I see no reason why you couldn't turn this into an identity course, once you kind of pull it together. But certainly learning how this works and hoping that it helps you when you're making decisions at work on how you want to implement authentication in your applications.
Definitely. Cool. So great stuff. I think we've still got some things to continue through and continue digging on. And I think we've got some, with that, then some shows that we're planning that we can do for next week. And if this is of interest to you, let us know in the comments. If you're watching in the future in the video, I'd love to know how this is helpful and things that you might want to have us kind of continue to drill into. So I think with that, we're running a little late. Appreciate if you're staying with us, folks who are watching live. And if you're, so I think what we kind of want to do is kind of wrap things up, get you off to stand off a little bit late. We've got some meetings to go to as well. So Chris, thanks so much. And for Chris, my name is Rich, and we will see you next time on the Dev Talk Show.